All right, Steeler fans, it's Monday morning. It means it's time for the Monday morning conversation. And I'm excited to have actually a guy that you've heard on the Steel Curtain Network before, Jim Wexell and the Steel City Insider. What's up, Jim? How's it going?
Good, Jeff. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing fine. You were off last week. I know Jeremy was a little ill and under the weather, so you didn't have a podcast. I was like, hey, I'll bring Jim on and he can talk on my show on Monday and let's get his takes. I talked about this with the news happening over, well, I guess it's Friday. Mason Cole gets released. Jim, were you shocked?
Shocked is not the right word. No,
Okay.
I didn't expect him back. A little surprised that it happened right now, but once you peel back the onion, you can understand why they did it. They saved, because I related to when they drafted Pouncey in 2010. They kept Justin Hartwig, even though they wanted to replace him with the rookie.
Right.
And so the reason you would keep Hartwig, even though you just extended his contract 3 years, reason you want to keep him is because if the rookie can't do the job, or you can't get the rookie you want in the draft. So they kept him, and so I was a little surprised in that way that maybe Mason Cole would have been kept. Mason Cole would have been kept to guarantee that they'll have a center in case things fall apart in the draft. They don't get the Jackson Powers Johnson, and then they try to wait to the second round to get one of the other guys, and they don't last to the second round. That could be disaster. But if you look, this team, Hartwig had Doug Legursky as his backup, who'd never started a game. He was undrafted third-year player in 2010. The only swing center on that roster was Trey Essex, and he had only practiced at center. He was believed to be able to maybe play center if problems arose. This team has Nate Herbig, James Daniels, Isaac Seumalo, Spencer Anderson. Ryan McCullum's been on the practice squad 2 years. He has just as much experience as Legursky had. So there is a plethora of potential fallbacks in case the Steelers can't get the guy they want in the draft, because the way this organization's been built around center for so many years and so many Super Bowls, you got to believe they want their next organizational foundation piece at that position. And this is a good year to draft it. So that's why I don't expect any activity at the position in free agency, even though the timing of this release makes it look like it will happen that way.
Well, what's funny to me is you look at all the releases that have happened so far this offseason, and it just seems unorthodox, I think is a good way to put it, based on the timing of it. Like you said, no one was surprised that Mitch Trubisky was released. No one was surprised that Chuks Okorafor was released, but the timing of it was definitely a little bit interesting. I think a lot of folks out there think that they might be tipping their hand as to their plans for both free agency and the draft. What were your takes on all the releases? Was there anything else that was surprising to you as it pertains to the release of Presley Harvin? He's still on a rookie contract. Trubisky, Okorafor. Obviously, we talked about Cole. Anything else surprise you about those moves?
Again, initially, I was surprised at the timing because the Steelers don't make moves until they have to. Just for instance, the punter. What if their backup punter? I should pick a new position probably, but what if that guy breaks his leg skiing?
Yeah.
What if Broderick Jones, gets hurt skiing, and then they need Chuks. But I think if you look at it, I think they decided, no, we don't even want these guys as fallbacks. We don't even want them as safety nets. I feel that way about Trubisky. I've seen enough. And Chuks, if he said what he said, we should take a knee the rest of the way in this game. Tomlin can never forgive that. So that had to go. And Harvin, you look at him and you say, I can't do this anymore with him. I think Harvin stuck around because he was such a good dude. He's strong character, really a good dude. Mason Cole is too, but that's neither here nor there. I think they liked Harvin as a person, and at that position, you can have better friendly players. Whereas, center, I really don't care how well Mason Cole spoke. He was a Rooney Award winner.
Yeah.
It didn't matter to me because I didn't really seek out his quotes. Some days, I mean, there would be nobody in the locker room but him. Some days I'd talk to him about O-line play, but otherwise he was playing so poorly. There's no gravitas. There's, your quotes are meaningless. Oh,
Right.
it says the crummy player. It's like, well, why do I want this guy's quote? I'd rather go, ask Cam Hayward what he thinks about the offensive line,
Yeah.
So really, and same with Mason Cole. I don't think they wanted him as a fallback either. And so I think they made clear decisions without worrying about a safety net. And I think all these decisions were right. So I'm really not as surprised as I was initially.
All right, fair enough. Now, Jim, I wanted to talk about some broader topics with you that relate to the Steelers. I feel like you're the guy to ask some of these questions because I think you have the context and being with the team, covering the team for a very long time. So I'm going to ask you first for a definition, and I want to see if you can give me your definition. This is not anything related to the Steelers. What is your definition of the Steelers way?
I've been going around asking people that for a couple of years because it's a potential book topic. I want to pattern it after, my idea is to pattern it after the Tao, where there's 81 chapters of wisdom. Mm-hmm. And then Wayne Dyer used that to then each one, he would break it down. So I wanted to make 81 different chapters of the Steelers way. And I don't think there's one Steelers way, even though so many of the people I've asked come up with pretty much the same thing, the toughness and the hard work. And I think it's a series of things. And I wanted to explore all of that. I wanted to ask them about their positions. Center is the Steelers way. Having a quality center is the Steelers way. Having quality pass rushers is the Steelers way. So those are things I'm getting off on a tangent instead of the character of the Steelers, which I really can't pin down anymore because they got lucky in the 2000s, that decade, because they had such great character. And so that brought back to mind the 70s. And people said, this is the Steelers way. This is how they do things. They get great character. They draft Hines Ward, Aaron Smith, on and on and on. I mean, quality people. That team won 2 Super Bowls. They were quality people because they were different. They were great. I don't think it was something they really could plan. You can look at character, definitely, but if you look, a lot of the high character guys can't play. The choir boys need to be in church on Sunday. So I'm a little lost on the character issue. I think the culture. I don't see the culture as being as bad as people want to say under Tomlin. I see a quality locker room, and AB. You brought AB in, and Troy Polamalu seems to think that was the beginning of the culture crash. But I mean, he was a 6th round pick, and he was so talented. They knew him from college. He was so talented in college. So, and then he was so good. So I think they learned to put up with some stuff, which NFL teams have to do. So yeah. I don't know that there's a general character marker that defines the Steelers way, but I think not dealing with free agents in season is a part of the Steelers way, and I've been exploring all those kinds of different things that are the Steelers way that make them unique. But I don't want to say they draft character more than any other team.
Yeah. Because like you said, you have to draft talent, and you just hope that the talent aren't a bunch of jackwagons that can't do their jobs on a regular basis. But let me follow up with this question. So you gave a lot of great examples of what the Steelers way are, both from a positional player perspective as well as the way they go about doing their business, whether it's not negotiating during the season with contract stuff, all that. How this current crop of Steelers and this current coaching staff and the front office, how close are they to abiding by those traditions and the Steelers way? Because I think that is something that the fan base, and I can speak as a fan here, they cling to the things like the standard is the standard and the Steelers way. And they say these things almost just like it's a slogan, but they believe in it and they live it and they love it. And then they feel like they're being let down when the team doesn't succeed, when they win 10 games and they get into the postseason and then they get shellacked again. So how far off are these guys is the question. You said, and you alluded to the culture in the locker room not being as bad as everyone thinks it is, which I appreciate that insight. But what else? Like, how far off are they from this thing?
I don't think they have the talent. I think, people. I can't get my lighting right. I'm sorry.
It's okay. Don't worry about
So
it.
it kind of gets brighter as it goes, and I'm like, wow, that's too much of me. Um, how far are they away? Well, let me hit on a couple other Steeler ways, and that is stability in the coaching staff, allowing the coach the power in the organization. People keep asking questions of Art Rooney and stuff. How is Omar Khan going to reshape this roster? How is Mike Tomlin going to reshape this roster? Omar Khan is his personnel guy who has his job, but final say is up to the head coach. It always has been in this organization. That's the Steelers' way. So those are other things. Now, how close are they? People are mad about 7 straight years, but I don't know which team was supposed to be that good. Was it the fading years of Ben Roethlisberger, whose arm turned to jello, and he was 36, 37, 38, 39 in his last 4 years, and also played well enough to keep them at 500 and allow them not to draft a replacement quarterback, even though Lamar Jackson fell in their lap. There's still controversy about whether he would have been good here or not, but still, I think he's a viable candidate that they should have looked at. And then they have a rookie quarterback for 2 years. I mean, finding a quarterback isn't easy. I don't know if you suffered through the 1980s, but it's just not something you can turn on.
Right.
It'll happen for them. They'll find their guy, whether they pass on Dan Marino, trade Sid Luckman, pass on Sammy Baugh. I mean, they have a history of cutting John Unitas. So they do get the franchise quarterback. Sometimes they're not smart enough to keep them or pick them. So that chance will come. And that's what they need. That's what they need. They need the foundation. Daniel Jeremiah's conference call the other day was interesting. Someone asked him if people are going to start copying the Lions, the success they had in the last draft, by drafting non-value positions: inside linebacker, running back, strong safety. There was another position. And Jeremiah said they could do that because they had the foundation set. They had the quarterback. They had the offensive line. They had the wide receiver. The Steelers are getting there, but they're still, I can't see them drafting an inside linebacker, say, just to pick a position of non-value, or a strong safety, even though they really need one. With the need for a center, a foundational piece, a real foundational piece, they still need a few of those. And quarterback's one. So they're foundational pieces away. I don't think it has anything to do with culture, locker room, or the head coach.
Fair enough. Let's talk about the head coach for a second. You've covered Mike Tomlin for a long time, and he's been here a long time. I believe he's the longest tenured coach in the National Football League at this point, after being hired in 2007. Just in recent years, have you noticed a change in Mike Tomlin in any way? It could be that he's become more prickly with the media. I don't care. But have you noticed any changes with him in the last few seasons? Have you seen any philosophical changes? Clearly, we see the players that are being selected and the players that are being brought in and now released. But what about him as a coach? I'm curious if you've seen anything from being in the press conferences, being around him, being around the team in the locker room. See any changes in it at all?
I really don't. And I think that's the beauty of him.
Yeah.
I really don't see any changes. I mean, there are a lot of reporters that think he's been more prickly, but I'm not one of them. But I'm not in the press conference grilling him. I take Tuesdays off. So I'm not in there grilling him and asking him what Omar Khan's going to do. I have a great relationship with him, and it's not the reason why I support him. And I still think he's a great coach. What I see that hasn't changed, which is why he's kept his job, is his energy level. I thought Bill Cowher's message got stale because he was a screamer, and after a while that stops working. But then I was wrong about that. He won a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So Mike Tomlin has that energy. His messages are always interesting. He keeps that team at attention. I don't see what people see when they say he's lost the team. His message is dull. He's lost energy. Man, he has not lost energy. You watch him out on the practice field, and that's important for a guy that's been there how many years. He has a zest for this. Still has a zest for going out and meeting prospects on the road at dinner. Loves all that. He loves everything to do with it. I don't see a change.
That's interesting because I think a lot of people would say that, and there are the detractors that'll say that that's not a positive. That if you're not changing, then you're getting lapped in the National Football League because the NFL is a constant evolution. We've seen it with the offensive, I would say the passing game and the rules definitely helping out the offense as well. But I don't know if philosophically have we seen enough. So the Steelers, let's talk about the offensive coaching staff for a second. They bring in Arthur Smith, and now they're making a lot of new hires, and they're bringing in new positions, offensive assistants. Mike Sullivan gets promoted to senior offensive assistant. I do want to pick your brain about what you thought about the offensive coordinator hire in Arthur Smith.
I like it. And I like that he's going to play to their tradition. He's going to play to the Steelers' way, get behind that running game because of that field, this weather, this division, and toughness never goes out of style. And running the ball, if you can't stop someone running the ball, it doesn't matter how many passing yards they have. You have to be able to pass. And the rules have liberated the passing game, and they should take advantage of it. I think he's still been searching for that. I think he wants to keep that power game identity, and now he's working to Tomlin's working to find the right mix of passing offense, because offense isn't his bag. He's a defensive coach, and that's his defense. And that's one change. When he changed from LeBeau, he got tired of watching that 3-4 zone blitz with its cover 3 corners giving big cushions, getting ripped apart by Tom Brady. I mean, teams figured that out. You just need some accuracy, and you can pick that cover 3 apart all the way down the field. So he got rid of LeBeau and installed his cover 2 that he was coaching in Tampa and Minnesota, and more 4-man rush, less nose tackle, which only fits today's game. He's still finding his way with that stuff. He hasn't had a LeBeau-like season as the de facto coordinator. So in those ways, I think he's still searching, and I think he's energetic enough to find something. And I have hope for Arthur Smith. I think it has more to do with quarterback than style of play. Even though I'm excited to see somebody other than Matt Canada coordinate this offense.
Was that why was that such a, was he, I mean, you can say it now because I guess was this dude, was he a total jerk I mean, there's been reports of him being an absolute clown in the facility. And I don't know if you've ever seen any of that based on the fact that he was brought back for a second season. It couldn't have been that bad, right?
I had a dinner with him and it was fine. I thought I saw some social awkwardness. As a guy who sits in a dark room and watches tape for 12 hours every day, might be a little socially awkward. And so I don't know. I think that was missing. I don't know how self-aware he was, but I didn't, overall jerk. I didn't see that. And I haven't been digging around people who work behind the scenes to find if he was a jerk. So,
okay, fair enough.
I mean, I think they kept him because when he started, he was coaching a 39-year-old quarterback who had undergone drastic arm surgery, and there was no offensive line for Ben. And, Ben was great to get rid of that ball as quickly as he did. But then when teams locked onto that strategy, they were done.
Yeah.
And then Canada had to coach a rookie quarterback. And Trubisky failed, and the rookie quarterback was a rookie. So I think that's why they brought him back for a third year, just to be fair to him, because he really hadn't been given a shot with a viable quarterback. And then the third year fell apart. And so we all knew, well, you used your Steelers' patience, you used your Steelers' way with that guy, and it didn't work out. Move on.
Yeah.
I don't think the patience really cost them or Pickett. I don't.
Okay, that's fair. So I want to bring up something, and this is before we go to a special segment I want to do with you at the end of the show. You've been a great friend of the show. You've been on my show several times, the Let's Ride podcast, and I asked you the last time you were on the show, this was prior
Oh
to
no.
2023, about Art Rooney II. And
Okay.
I said, "What's he like?" And you just said in your answer was, "He's a lawyer." Like, that was your answer. He's a lawyer.
That's a good answer.
It was a good answer. I remember it. That's why it's a good answer. Now, I've read your books. You can see some of them on the shelf behind me. And it's funny because you had the Chief, the lovable loser. Then Dan Rooney comes in, and Dan Rooney was different. I mean, I don't know how to describe Dan Rooney. I was not around him. I've only read about him. But then there's Art. And I think Art Rooney II, like you said, he's a lawyer and he just kind of does his thing and he's there, but he's not as visible, maybe. I don't know. What's the perception of this guy? And I know that you said he's a lawyer, but there's a lot of people that are wondering, is he more of the lovable loser than his father, Dan? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't see that. And, I don't know that it's fair to paint the Chief as a lovable loser the way he could gamble. He went to the track.
Maybe just in football. Maybe just in football.
He was as sharp and cutthroat as they come. I think he was just, he had his duty was to make this franchise survive. He had wanted to move it. And the Washington Redskins owner talked him out of it, said, this is a great football town. Things are going to happen when you get players. So it kept him in the 40s. And I think he just wanted to get the job done. And then when Dan came in, Dan had his brains and his cutthroatness, but also his warmth. Now I don't want to say Art Rooney II is cold. He's not a cold fish. He's a lawyer. I mean, he's smart enough not to open up his feelings too much like his father and grandfather did. They were warm, embracing Rooneys, and they would give you wisdom no matter who you were or what your problem was. Come talk to me. And they would provide you with some wisdom. And I can't speak personally about the Chief. I never met him, but Art isn't as approachable. But when I see him, I mean, he's warm enough. He's warm enough. Yeah. But that's always been the perception, especially when he first came along as team president. What's he like? And someone said to me, his wife doesn't even know. So it's not that cold. and I think, this is just somebody that doesn't know his wife and family. I'm just, right. I think that's just how the answer was given to me by one person that worked in the building. But there was that withdrawn, calculating look, appearance. And I don't know that it's bad. I wouldn't call him a lovable loser just because he hasn't done what his father did. What his father did was incredible. Starting with Buddy Parker. And even he made a bad hire, Bill Austin. So, his second time was much better with Chuck Noll.
Well, I think that, you saw the Chief and he was an outward character and everyone knew about him, whether it was the wins or losses or all that stuff. You have Dan and the success that he had. And then Art Rooney II is just kind of like this figure that he's there and we hear him talking and he goes on television and did his whole circuit on all the local stations and he did his spot with the beat writers and all that. But that's it. Like, we really don't know this guy, not the way we did his predecessor. So it's interesting, but I appreciate your insight. Now let's finish this segment up with a fun segment. This is just your opinion. Okay, so this is like a prediction time, but it's just your opinion. So in no way, shape, or form, excuse me, are you speaking for the Steelers or anyone in that organization or even anyone on your website? This is just your opinions. I'm going to ask you a question. You give me your opinion of the topic. Are you ready?
Just my opinion?
Just your opinion. Yep.
That's what my notes column is always titled.
There you go. All right, so who's the quarterback one in 2024?
I think it's Kenny Pickett. I think that's been pretty much made known. And when they say we want to bring competition in, that holds for every position. It was an easy answer that was misconstrued. Somebody opened the door for a coach to answer with a layup. Yes, of course we're going to have competition.
Yeah.
Whether that means Mason Rudolph, whether that means Ryan Tannehill, but Kenny, they want Kenny to start. They want to give Kenny the full opportunity. And I think he's going to take advantage of it. I don't think he's as bad as people want to believe. I think last year was a bad year for him all around. The sophomore slump, whatever you want to call it, that's always been an issue. I thought he showed a lot of the clutch gene. I get mocked for saying that, but he showed some fourth quarter moxie that winning quarterbacks need that. I'll take that. Let's start with that and let's continue to improve. But I just remember last mini camp, he was under pressure and running up into the pocket and out and throwing deep. I wanted to, why can't this guy work from the pocket, get his read and throw from the pocket? And so I asked Mike Sullivan that, and I said, why isn't Kenny looking as a pocket passer? Why isn't he getting better at his reads? And Sullivan said, we want him to learn to step up into the pocket and use his mobility. I'm like, they're teaching him to do this. So I'd like to see them work more on his pocket skills and being more relaxed in the pocket and understanding his reads better. So that's what I'm hoping for this year. So I don't know that it was all Kenny's fault. Didn't I just 5 minutes ago say that their patience didn't hurt Pickett? So maybe a little bit, but
all right. Follow up to that. Do you think Mason Rudolph is back in 2024?
I think so. I think, Mason's saying that he's going to test free agency, and he's only smart to say that.
Yeah.
But I think the Steelers want him back, and I think they'll get him. Ryan Tannehill's interesting as well because he's 36. Isn't he 36? But
there.
Yeah, but I think he understands now his role would be as a backup mentor type, and I think he would embrace that. Russell Wilson, maybe Tannehill's 34, Russell Wilson's 36, and he would come cheaply, which is surprising. The way the contract is set up, you probably know a little bit more about that contract than I do, but they can get him for vet minimum. So why wouldn't you like Russell Wilson? His stats were really good last year. He's still mobile, but this is a guy that's going to want to start. I don't know that he would accept being the backup. And this would be an example of the Steelers not really wanting competition for Kenny.
Right.
So I think, if Kenny falters, then they're going to look at the competition. How's the competition doing? But I think they're going to give Kenny every chance and in that way not bring in somebody who's going to demand to be starter or pout on the bench.
Yeah. Okay. Next question. Do they pick up Najee Harris's 5th-year option?
I think so. That number is doable. I'm not the biggest Najee fan.
We know that.
But, I mean, you had to be impressed by some of the things he did down the stretch, and he fits that Steelers identity, what they want. So he's a hard worker. Don't get me wrong. I don't know that he adds to the culture because I think he's a bit nasty and when he doesn't need to be. I think he's a bit phony when he needs to be. Those are my personal opinions. I don't deal with the man. But I mean, I can see his value on the team, and he is a hard worker, and that's all fans really care about.
Right.
Beyond his, he pointed to the offensive line to reporters. He rolled his eyes one time, didn't give a quote, but you could see his intention was to disparage the offensive line 2 seasons ago. And okay, fair enough. The offensive line stunk. But I don't like to see teammates pointing fingers like that. And as he did about discipline at the end of last year, just because it's not a college type atmosphere that he had grown fond of at Alabama, doesn't mean that this team lacks discipline. I've seen Tomlin too fiery on the practice field to say this team doesn't have discipline. And also their penalties, they're always in the top half of the league in fewest penalties. You could fact check me on that and maybe prove me wrong, but I'm pretty sure I've looked it up several times, and they're just not as penalized as people want to believe. They just need a quarterback and finally finish the offensive line.
It's true.
Before the defense gets too old. It's a tricky one.
It is. Well, that's a great segue into the next question, which is the Steelers draft 20th overall in the NFL draft 2024. Do you predict they trade up, they trade down, or they stay put?
Oh man, Omar could do anything. That's Omar is a great negotiator, great phone guy. He really proved his value in the tradings last draft. So I'm gonna say trade up a couple spots to get Jackson Powers Johnson. And here's the thing, if they sit tight at 20, they can trade down a few spots and get one of the other 2 centers.
Yeah, Frazier, the guy from Georgia, which his name
Well,
escapes
no,
me.
I like the guy from Duke. I think a lot of
Oh,
NFL people
okay.
like the tackle. He's a left tackle who projects as a center, Graham Barton.
Okay. All
So
right.
that interests me. And I know center has to be a very intelligent player like Pouncey, and I look at Barton as a guy from Duke, so he should be smart, right? Frazier,
Think.
Frazier, I just love the fact that he's a 4-time state heavyweight wrestling champion in high school. You
And
know,
he comes from West Virginia, and I'm from West Virginia, so I can make fun of West Virginia. So maybe he's not the smartest. He's coming from West Virginia.
at him, at Jeff.
I'm from there. I can say that. All right, I'm from Wheeling, West
Okay.
Virginia. So there you go.
I can't. I thought you were going to say West Virginia high school wrestling is not nearly as good as
Oh,
Pennsylvania, because I know
I
that.
I
But
wouldn't know
still,
that. I did not wrestle in high school, so I don't know. All right, last
Pennsylvania.
question.
So
Last
when
question.
go ahead.
Go ahead. You
No.
want to go ahead? Okay.
No.
Over under on the total wins. Early prediction 9.5. What are you taking the over the under?
I had over 8.5 last year, and it was a scary ride. I gave up and hedged in the final game, the next to last game, which they covered, and then won the next game. So I screwed it up. So I don't even want to even look at the over under for this year. 9.5.
That's not official. That's just my own line. That's not like from a book. That's just my own brain.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, I'm going to say under 9.5 just to be safe. Just to be safe, but I wouldn't take that with anything. I mean, they're still building. They're still building, and we just got to see what Kenny has next camp, and the offensive coordinator. Otherwise, I'm just gun shy from last year. I don't even want to think about over under for the season. This team just drove me crazy last year.
It was a roller coaster, that's for sure. Now, Jim, I know you've got something in the works. I mentioned your books, Palomalu, which is a phenomenal read. On the Clock was another great read. And then you're Behind the Steel Curtain, I think is what it was called, which was, did you not know? What was your book about the where you traveled around looking at the fan base?
That was Steeler Nation.
Steeler Nation. That's another one that
Tales from Behind the Steel Curtain,
yes.
which Jack Lambert loved so much. He gave me an interview for my second book, a Where Are They Now book, which is much more boring than Tales from Behind the Steel Curtain starring Jack Lambert. So many cool Lambert stories because he didn't call me back. And so the second he calls, I just made a perfunctory phone call to him and didn't expect him to call back, but he did. I said, wow, I'm surprised. He said, I don't normally call people like you back, but I thought your first book was the best Steeler book I ever read. So how can I help you? And so I wrote this kind of dull Men of Steel. It's good, but it's not about the seasons. It's about individual players, what they're doing now. And I took a look at a lot of hidden gems, which only made people mad. They wanted the Hines Ward, Ben Roethlisberger. They wanted those Men of Steel. But it was a Where Are They Now book. And I sent Jack a copy. I said, hey, let's do your autobiography. And he wrote back and said, as I told you, I just read Men of Steel, and I have to tell you, I still think your first book was the best Steeler book I ever read. And no, I don't want to do an autobiography. That's only for great men like Ronald Reagan. And he named like 5 Republicans, only for really great men, And so I've contacted him since, and he has upped his stance to, if I do decide to do an autobiography, you're my guy.
Nice.
And so he goes, how do you see this working out? How do you see this going down? I said, did you ever see the movie Cobb? He goes, oh yeah, Cobb with Tommy Lee Jones. That was so good. I said, well, I'm Richard Whirl. I'm the biographer that Cobb tries to kill, chases down the mountain in a blizzard. And he goes, that's exactly how it would be.
Well, outside of the Lambert book, I know you're working on what I hear. I think a Steelers history book, like the history of the Steelers. What's going on there?
It's a coffee. It seems like a coffee table book. A publishing house contacted me and asked me if I would do 160 vignettes with pictures. So I assume it's going to be, and it's going to sell for $42. So I think it's going to be a big old coffee table book with pictures and vignettes that capture the history of the Steelers. and I'm at out of 160, I have 145 done.
Wow.
I'm ready to write the 2010 AFC Championship game where they lose Pouncey and then lose to the Packers because they couldn't handle the Packers' backup nose tackle, Doug Legursky replacing Pouncey. It gave up the pick 6, which was one of the key plays in that game. So Pouncey was a real loss. So those are my next 2 vignettes, and then I'll be left with 13 to cover the final 14, 15 seasons.
Yeah.
But it's funny. I after I finished. I finished 2 books, Polamalu and the draft book, on the clock in a row. And then a publishing house bought the Polamalu book and was going to release it in paperback. So all I had to do was touch up some stuff and send them that entire package. And my work was done for the spring. And so I'm looking at a 3rd consecutive book and really not doing any work. So I went to the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton and went into the library. I know the research guide there, and he lets me in and he gives me access to all of it. And so I just started making Steeler notes. I would spend three nights in Canton and just absorb the entire history of the Steelers. And I've known most of the history, and I've been through all these newspaper clippings, but I wrote down, because I had 3 or 4 books in mind. Oh, this would work for Steelers Way. Oh, this would work for Blitzburg. Or this would work for my linebackers or Lambert book. See, if Lambert finally begs out of this, I'll just make it all the linebackers. So I've been talking to linebackers too. Lamar Woodley said, "You want to put me in that book?" I said, "Of course." So he gave me his number. And so I'm set to do like 4 different books with all the notes I took in that library, in those library sessions for a couple months. And then I went home and ordered all the Steeler books. I reread Rooney, reread Dan Rooney book, the Art Rooney book, the Art Rooney Jr. book, the Shazier book, Cordell Stewart, you name it, I read it. Yeah. And then I kept taking notes and say, for this, see page 39 of the Bettis book. So I'm sitting there, and this company calls me and says, "Hey, we're looking for a guy who has a lot of notes and can write the history of the Steelers." I said, "I got like 10 notebooks packed full of stuff." So I'm going through all that, and there's some really good nuggets that really aren't known by the fan base, and that I'm excited. And it makes they only want 250 words max on a vignette, and all mine are like 249. I've been condensing. I could write some for 150. They say 150 to 250. I can't do that. I got too much. I get too excited when I do these vignettes. So I think it's going to be a pretty cool book.
Cool. That's awesome. And Jim, tell everyone where they can find your work at Steel City Insider.
We have a subscription site at Steel City Insider. And what I try to sell is, I'm going to be the guy to calm you down. I mean, when some minor news breaks and morphs into some huge locker room catastrophe or drafting foul up, I'm like, wait, hey, this did not happen this way. Take it easy. Everything's going to be okay. So I'm not a clickbait guy, and I'm like the anti-clickbait guy. So I work on understanding and sources and what's going to happen. And we've got an answer man coming up early March, and people love that, especially before free agency starts. So that's my subscription site, and my books are on sale at jimwexell.com. The Polamalu book is a beautiful cover. It's a big book. It's 400 pages, and it details the 2000s as a team as well as Polamalu. And so I think that's a great history lesson. It's only $15. I think the paperback costs more on Amazon. I'm not selling that, but I have hardcovers, and they're beautiful, and they're great gifts, and it's $15. I highly recommend those. But thank you for letting me. Thank you. That's at jimwexell.com. But thank you, Jeff.
No problem. Thank you for taking the time and being on the show. Make sure you hear Jim on the Steel Curtain Network Podcast Network. He will be on with the Steel City Insider and Jeremy Ritz, and make sure you check him out. Jim, thanks for your time. I do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I hope I didn't babble too much.
No, you're good. Thank you, Jim. Okay. See ya.
All right. Thanks, buddy.